Her name is Carrie Wedler. Please join me in welcoming Carrie Wedler.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Good to see you all. Oh my God, I talk kind of loud, so I need to figure out an appropriate volume.
We see these beautiful pictures at night from the decks of these two U.S. Navy vessels in the Eastern Mediterranean. I am tempted to quote the great Leonard Cohen, "I'm guided by the beauty of our weapons." And they are beautiful pictures of fearsome armaments making what is for them a brief flight over to this airfield.
So, quick survey. How many of you in your journey away from statism, away from the established paradigms, at some point started to realize that the narratives and the information we get from mainstream established outlets is often bullshit? Yeah, me too. Cool. I figured that would be the response. So, if I can bring up the PowerPoint again, please. I have a quote. So this is Edward Bernays. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him. He was one of the most famous propagandists of the 20th century. His first major effort was to convince Americans that the United States needed to enter World War I. He went on to work with the CIA to help orchestrate media glorifications of their coups, at least one. And he said, I'm going to look back because that's backwards. He said, propaganda is the executive arm of the invisible government. And this was in 1928. And as it turned out, he was right. So as the decades went on and the CIA became very well established, they first started by just working their influence slightly into the media. I need the PowerPoint again, please. So Allen Dulles, who was the first chair of the CIA, this is according to Tim Weiner, who was a New York Times journalist for quite some time. He wrote a history of the CIA. Dulles kept in close touch with the men who ran the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the nation's leading weekly magazines. He could pick up the phone and edit a breaking story, make sure an irritating foreign correspondent was yanked from the field, or hire the services of men such as the Times Berlin bureau chief and Newsweek's man in Tokyo. So this is in the 50s. Then by the 1970s, we had Carl Bernstein, who was a Washington Post reporter, exposing the CIA and their role in journalism even further. I can see the text is really small here. It wasn't in my PowerPoint, I'm sorry, so I'm just gonna read to you. There was cooperation, accommodation, and overlap. Journalists provided a full range of clandestine services, from simple intelligence gathering to serving as go-betweens with spies in communist countries. Reporters shared their notebooks with the CIA. Editors shared their staffs. Some of the journalists were Pulitzer Prize winners, distinguished reporters who considered themselves ambassadors without portfolio for their country. In many instances, CIA documents show, journalists were engaged to perform tasks for the CIA with the consent of the managements of America's leading news organizations. So that was in 1977. So it's pretty clear that the government has learned how to use the media as an instrument of its aims, of its goals, and its desires to control us. I think that's established. And we see it today, whether it's with promotion of war, whether it's perpetuating the false dichotomy of the two-party system, and more generally, just statism in general. They keep us distracted. I had a fun video of the pizza rat.
So you had to get...
Ay, por favor, qué susto me ha dado. Oh my God. What? Oh my God, what?
So in addition to keeping us distracted, I think we all know that they lie. So this is a PolitiFact study from 2015, and they found, after reviewing the claims made on Fox News, that 10% of claims on Fox News were fully true, and on MSNBC that was 9%. So yeah, right, exactly. That's pretty clear, and we also know that narratives are manipulated. It's not just outright lies, it's very subtle manipulation. So we have a Reuters article The title is North Korea Rules Out Negotiations on Nuclear Weapons. They're so terrible, they're gonna kill us all, they're out of control, they're rogue, they need to be taken out. But if you look at the article and what the official actually said, he said, as long as there is continuous hostile policy against my country by the US, and as long as there are continued war games at our doorstep, then there will not be negotiations. That just seems like kind of a big thing to leave out. Like if the headline is that they are not open to negotiations unless the US stops being a really jingoistic military empire, that just seems like something you would want to mention instead of terrifying millions of people into thinking that war is inevitable. And of course, it would be the US who caused it anyway. But you guys know all this. I'm not here to talk about how much the mainstream media sucks. That's not the point. We know this. We're already vacating that mindset and that paradigm, and I'm so happy about that. It's so exciting. I work for the Anti-Media. I've been with them since 2014, so I've very much been enjoying this evolution. Independent media is on the rise. The rise of independent journalism. It's really exciting, and there's so many great examples of it. We have people literally live streaming on the ground and bringing you information that is unfiltered, that nobody has an opportunity to spin it. So we have people like Ford Fisher of News to Share. We have a great organization called Unicorn Riot. Derek Brose was at Standing Rock getting tasered and pepper sprayed while he was reporting and live streaming, yeah. And then we have investigative journalism. We have Ben Swan, who has shown how clear the threat is to the establishment. We see what happens when you really challenge these narratives and these paradigms. And so I'm so excited to be a part of it. I'm so excited to be there. And I'm so excited to see the internet helping it grow, this decentralization of media, the way that we can now bring information to ourselves instead of having it spoon-fed to us in a way that has already been determined and that serves a higher agenda that has nothing to do with us except to exploit us. That's so exciting. That being said, a common phrase I see in independent media, wrong way, sorry. Do your own research. That's a big one. And I often look like that guy. I think we all do. We're sharing stories with people and letting them know how horrible things are and all the terrible things our government is doing. And it's so important. But one of the things I have found, I spent a lot of time on the internet because I work on the internet. I found that often accompanying this phrase is a general practice of finding a story from a non-mainstream outlet, great. Deciding that it's reprehensible and horrible, great. Sharing it on social media, not checking any of the sources, and then scolding your sheeple status friends for being so ill-informed and stupid, and they need to do their own research too. But there's actually very little fact-checking involved. And before we go any further on that, I just want to acknowledge again how horrible the mainstream is. And I want to give you a certain example because it became personal for me. So in November of 2016, can I get the PowerPoint back? Yeah. In November of 2016, after Donald Trump won the election, there was this wonderful effort by the mainstream media to blame Russia. As we all know, it's still going on. And there's this beautiful article called Russian Propaganda Effort Helped Spread Fake News During Election, Experts Say. Who are the experts? We still don't know, because they were citing an anonymous organization that claimed to have studied independent media, alt media, and found that we were either intentionally spreading Russian propaganda or we were useful idiots. We just didn't know any better, and we were just promoting the Russian government and undermining American democracy, and anti-media was on that list. A lot of outlets were. And for a second, that was a loud exhale. For a second, I was really questioning myself. I was like, wait, okay, this needs to move. Am I a Russian propagandist? Am I that stupid? Do I not know? Am I intentionally doing this? What's wrong with me? Am I not credible? Oh my God, and it really got to me for a couple days. And of course, the article was then completely eviscerated. People like Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi called it out and just showed that you can't cite an anonymous source and just say experts said and have absolutely nothing to back it up. And 3 weeks later, they printed a very half-assed retraction. I don't have it in here. But the point being, we know the mainstream is terrible and that they're not to be trusted. But at the same time, there is bad reporting in independent media. That is also a fact. I'm so sorry, this is confusing. Yes, there is bad reporting. And I want to give a couple examples because in that bad reporting, unfortunately, some of our statist tendencies are following us when we fall for it. So there are certain mechanisms of reporting in an irresponsible way that the mainstream media does, and we know full well that it's not credible, but then we see it in independent media and we eat it up. So in one example, this is Washington Post had this wonderful story after the election claiming that the CIA said that they think the Russians hacked the election. It was the Washington Post and the New York Times, and it was a huge story, and it was one of the stories that I think really solidified this notion in the minds of the American people. And it was an anonymous CIA agent who provided no documentation. And we all were like, no way, we're not buying that. Those of us who are already kind of aware of the way the mainstream manipulates narratives. However, fast forward to the Las Vegas shooting, Alex Jones, InfoWars, published a story claiming that an anonymous government agent developed or discovered something. It was that Antifa, there were like Antifa documents in the shooter's room, but nobody went on record. There was nothing to substantiate it. It was an anonymous government agent, and there was no documentation to prove it. And you'd think maybe he could get like a picture of the paperwork, because he's talking about specific paperwork. Nothing. But that article went viral, and the people sharing it were often the same people who knew that the CIA story from the Washington Post was ridiculous. And in another example of these same tendencies bleeding over into our freedom paradigm, who knows what Voice of America is? You guys, it's a US government-funded news outlet, right? If we were to see a story from that, we'd be like, yeah, no, come on, I'm not gonna believe US government-funded propaganda or narratives. But at the same time, in independent media, a very popular source is Sputnik, which is a Russian government-funded news organization. And I see it all the time. That's often a main source for news outlets. And I'm not saying that everything Sputnik publishes is a lie. Not even everything Voice of America publishes is a lie. But as anarchists and as people who are skeptical of the state, I just think it would be a good idea if we considered the possibility that their news might be slanted. But that doesn't seem to be happening. It's taken at face value. And the reason for this, I think, is actually a really sweet one. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's that people are trusting. And I think that's actually a beautiful thing. I think it says so much about humanity that we see the good, we expect the good because we're good. I don't think we expect to be lied to by people who are claiming to be arbiters of truth. However, despite that being a good thing, I'm gonna see where I'm at in my PowerPoint. Despite that being a good thing, this is something that the state and its institutions readily exploit. So without our trust, they wouldn't be able to convince us to be blindly obedient. Whether it's public school, whether it's the CIA, the FBI, the military, politicians, they would lose their power if we stopped blindly trusting them, if we stopped blindly submitting and accepting their authority as superior. And they need that trust. They need that innocent trust in order to keep their power, unfortunately. And again, unfortunately, this continues to bleed over into independent media, where we continue to just believe what we see. And I have a couple examples I want to bring up. One, there was an article about ISIS, maybe 6-7 months ago. And it was very popular in the independent news circuit. And many of the headlines claimed that a Pentagon report proves very clear, it proves that the United States intentionally armed ISIS. But if you were to click on that report, and you were to read that report, and you were to search the document, you would find that there was absolutely no admission of intention. They admit that they accidentally got some arms into their hands, and for all we know, they did it intentionally. But that was not stated in the report. But that article went very viral, even though the report they were citing did absolutely not match up to the headline and the truth that it was claiming to share with people. In another example, I've got this lovely meme with a very important and relevant quote. It was allegedly from George Orwell's 1984, written in 1949. And it says, "The people will not revolt. They will not look up from their screens long enough to notice what's happening." True, right? Pretty accurate. However, George Orwell did not write that. This is a quote from an adaptation of his play in 1984, in the year 1984. That's not true. That's not what he said. It's true in a sense, but it's not accurate. And unfortunately, this is, oh, sorry. I do yoga. I like inhale and exhale a lot. I'm just exhaling all over the mic. Okay. Here we go again. So you might be wondering, who cares, Carrie? We know that the United States is responsible for creating ISIS in whatever capacity we are aware of. We know that the US played a huge role. And we also know that that quote is true, so who cares? The end truth is accurate, so why does it matter? Why are you being so nitpicky? I have 2 reasons why I care. If I can get my PowerPoint back, please. Yes. 1, being careless with these facts drives away people who might otherwise be open to our movement and to accepting independent journalism. There are so many people who are so sick of the mainstream and they know it's lies, and then they see an article like that and they click the report and they see that it's not consistent and they say, F this, why should I bother with them? They're exactly like the mainstream. I quit. And then they just disassociate and they want nothing to do with us, and they're missing out on these amazing ideas that people are sharing here at this conference. I know at Anti-Media we definitely inject anarchism into our reporting, even if we don't outright call it that, we're putting it in there. And if we were to have misleading stories and we were to consistently have bad news, we would lose people. And then we lose sight of our end mission. The second reason, in my opinion, that it is extremely important is that to discard facts and reality just to confirm something we believe to be true is a very statist tendency. Even if we know we're right, even if we know that anarchism is the correct thing and it's the moral thing, it's a statist thing to do. Look at Russiagate. There's no evidence, yet millions of people are convinced that Russia hacked the election. Even though they can't support it, they know that it's true. And then you look at weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. No evidence, but how many people still think that there was something there that had to be taken out just because they wanted to bomb somebody after 9/11? This is statist to me, and to assume things and to reject facts when we could be just doing a little more research is not empowering to me. It's not holding people accountable, and it's not taking control of our own consciousness, which I think is really vital to statism. It's not just about accepting that government is immoral. It's also about owning yourself and taking responsibility for the information that comes into your mind and how you process it. So with that in mind, before I go any further, I want to address something. Let's see which PowerPoint comes up. What did I say? Yeah, widespread good intentions. I don't mean, I'm kind of being hard on independent media right now, but I don't want to make it seem like I hate them. I love them. I'm part of the independent media. And I want to speak to the good intentions of people. They're not out to manipulate. They are not out to mislead. They're often just making mistakes. They're rushing to publish things. They might be skimming a report and not reading it fully or clearly. They might just not have researched it enough. But they really mean well and they want to make a change. And I want to put myself out there as an example of that. And the first one is from 2011 when I first became active. I started making Ron Paul videos. That's how I first got on YouTube. This is 2011, and this is before even that. Like, I had just started waking up, and I was reading all the news, and I posted an article from Prison Planet on my Facebook, and I had and I had no idea who that even was because I didn't stop to think. I thought, here's an article, and it says something. It must be true, because why would I think that somebody would be making something up? And I remember someone commented, and their comment was, "Come on, Carrie, really, Prison Planet?" And it was the first time that I was like, oh crap, maybe I should have looked into that more. But then it ended up that I started working with Anti-Media, and this is the real one that got me. So if I can get my PowerPoint back. In 2015, I just become editor for Anti-Media, and I was working on a story. I had seen a little blurb about it. And it was about a really horrible statist-induced disaster about 20 miles from where I grew up in Los Angeles, in a place called Simi Valley. There had been a nuclear plant. It was there in the 1950s. Got a statist contract from the government. It was like Rocketdyne at the time. And it was the Department of Energy, and it was operating pretty quietly. And in 1957, there was a massive leak, and they covered it up. They didn't tell anybody. They pretended like it was a minor thing, but it actually seeped radiation throughout the entire community into the soil, into the ground. And for literally decades, people have been getting cancer. And to this day, there has been no cleanup. There has been no accountability. And so I really researched this story. It really affected me. It was really heavy. I spent a really long time writing it. It was like a 2-part story. And I was really pleased with it. I felt pretty good about myself. Like, wow, I'm talking about something important. I am researching something important. People don't know. People need to know. So I was really pleased with it. And I decided, it was a part 1 and a part 2. I decided I wanted to write a part 3. So I sent my article to this professor who had conducted a study that found that rates of cancer had increased. And I was so excited to hear back from him. I sent him some questions, thank you so much for researching this, it's so important. And I get an email back, and he basically called me a fraud and a fake journalist, and basically said I had absolutely no skills at all because I had misquoted the study. I had misinterpreted it. I had thought that all rates of cancer increase 60%. In fact, it was certain rates of cancer. And so if you bring my PowerPoint back, that's a little correction I had to add. There's a little editor's note acknowledging it. But that really shook me up. Like, I think I cried, honestly. I was really sad for a couple weeks, and I felt like an embarrassment. Oh my God, I can't believe that I could have been so careless with the facts like that. And I just want to give a shout out to Ben Swan. I don't know if he's here, but I remember watching a video from him years ago, and he said that it's okay to make a mistake, but you have to correct it. The real error, the real wrongdoing is if you make a mistake and you don't acknowledge it and you don't tell people that you were wrong and you don't fix it. So that was a really big experience for me. And I need to bring up my PowerPoint again. It's just to speak to the fact that people really do mean well. I mean, I think I mean well. You may not think I mean well, but in my heart, I think I mean well. I really do want to make a difference. I want to inform people. I want to help people think for themselves, and that was a big mistake on my part, despite my good intentions. So that was also one of the things that made me really care about what I'm talking about right now. However, there are also people with bad intentions. I don't know if you guys know of Neon Nettle much. They're always in my newsfeed. And as far as I know, they don't claim to be satire. Like, they claim to be a legitimate news organization. And so here we have a lovely headline from them. Lady Gaga, Prince Charles is a reptilian shapeshifter. So she said that, allegedly. But if you click on the article, there's no video, there's no quote. There are quotes from her, but there's no source to the quotes. But this is reality. They've never corrected it. They've never said anything different. And in my opinion, these are people who are out for clicks. There are definitely people who will click on an article like this and they will take it at face value. And for them, that generates revenue and it generates profit, so they have no reason to stop. So I see this as a very widespread and pervasive problem. And I want to bring it back to our friend Edward Bernays. Because as much as we can blame the outlets and we can call them out, which is really important, at the end of the day, as Edward Bernays said, the truth is that while it appears to be forming the public opinion on fundamental matters, the press is often conforming to it. This was in 1922. And I know that since then, the media has found much more effective ways to manipulate people and to direct their thoughts and their beliefs, but I think this still really holds true. And before I go any further on that, I just want to touch on why we're here in Anarchapulco. And I'm going to read from it because I don't want to forget anything, because it means a lot to me. But let's see. Can I get... No, that's me again. Nope, I'm going backwards. Hold on, sorry. There we go. Why are we here? First and foremost, I think it's because we believe in the power of individuals and free markets to create a far better world than statism ever could. We believe in individual accountability and applying it voluntarily to others. However, this means that we have to hold ourselves accountable for the information we consume, as well as hold outlets accountable for what they publish as quote-unquote truth. And in my opinion, anything less than that is succumbing to the statist tendency of blind obedience and relinquishing our individual authority over our consciousness. So, the good thing is there's a wonderful free market solution to these problems we see in independent media. Let's see, I keep getting the PowerPoint wrong. One more. No, wrong, man, okay. There we go. Reduce demand. When we click on articles that are misleading, with misleading headlines that have bad information, we are generating ad revenue for the outlets that are producing them. So the easiest way to stop doing that is to stop clicking. And when they stop making money off of these bad articles, they will reduce the amount of them that they write. This is a very simple solution we can use. However, I want to go over just some simple tips for recognizing this bad news. Or poor reporting. I don't want to say bad, but just unreliable reporting. I'm going to read again. Oh, I'm at the wrong slide. No, still, I might get this by the end of the speech. Okay, so very simple stuff, and it's something we wouldn't think to do because I think we are trusting, open human beings, and we don't think that we're going to have to question everything we hear, especially from people who purport to be challenging lies. Anyway, read the entire article and then see if it matches up to the headline. This is a really simple one. Sometimes we're busy, sometimes we're skimming an article. We don't have time to really sit there with all of our attention and focus, but oftentimes you can tell if an article is using clickbait, sensationalism, and being dishonest just by comparing what's in the article to what's in the headline. Really simple. Another one, check their sources, then check the sourcing on those sources. Because oftentimes what happens is there's a loop effect where there might be 3 outlets that are saying the same thing and citing the same quote, but none of them have any original source. It's often an anonymous source. There's no documentation. So you might notice that if you click a link, it sends you to one alt website, and then it sends you another alt website, and then it sends you back to the one you were on, and you can't find any original sourcing on it. So that's another one to look out for. If there is an anonymous source, is what they're saying confirmed by tangible proof that they've provided? Are there other on-the-record sources? Is there anything to substantiate it? I'm not saying that any anonymous source is inherently wrong, but we should just have our feelers out to see if there's anything that can further substantiate what they're saying. Again, watch the videos, or not again, for the first time, watch the videos outlets are embedding and claiming to be quoting. So oftentimes you'll see a video in a report and you're like, yeah, they must have done their research, they're putting it in there, it must be legit, but then you click the video and it doesn't match what they're quoting. This is just another simple thing that we shouldn't have to worry about, but we do. And finally, this is my favorite one. Read the reports they're citing. So much of the information, whether mainstream media is reporting on it or whether independent media is reporting on it, it's out there. It's just in publicly available documents. It often comes from Inspector General reports, from Pentagon reports. It comes from things that are out there for us to check. And so it's more work. It kind of is a pain, but if you just click the report they're citing, if you don't want to have to read the entire report, just do a page search, check the quote, verify, look for what they're claiming and find it in the document and make sure it's there. Just some simple tips. And then from there, hold the outlets accountable. So if you find that an outlet is providing bad news, no, not bad news, unreliable news. I don't want to call anyone bad. But if you do find that there are errors, email the editors. We live on the internet. In independent media, like I wake up, I'm online. I'm online all day. I'm checking my email. That's our habitat. Email us. Let us know that something is wrong. I recommend being nice and civil because like a human is reading those emails, but I mean, do what you can. But also try to provide documentation of why they're wrong. Let them know, give them the chance to correct it. And then when you do, hold them accountable. Go to their website, see if they corrected the error. If they didn't correct it, if they refuse to correct it, then I think it's time to call them out publicly. You go on their social media, and again, bring your proof, bring your documentation, hopefully your civility, but let them know and let other people know that they're a site they need to look out for and that they need to be more skeptical of. And this one, I am saying again, stop clicking the articles. You're gonna have to click them to find out if they're reliable or not, but if you find that they are, stop clicking, stop sharing their content, unlike their pages, and let them know that there are actual ramifications to spreading bad information. This is a free market solution, and I am confident that it will absolutely reduce the demand for this kind of news. And on a positive note, when you find outlets that you do think are reliable, support them. Like their pages, share their content, and if possible, donate to them. A lot of them have Patreon pages, we do. If you think that they're providing something valuable and that they are reliable, go for it. And if you can't donate, sharing and liking their pages is enough. It's really a great start, and it's a great way to show that they're providing value to you. And on that note, this is kind of a pain in the ass, honestly. It's so much more work. It would be so much easier to just be able to read an article and accept that it's real and it's true and share it and not have to worry about checking. That being said, freedom is also hard. It's not easy to detach from the state. It is not easy to take responsibility for yourself, whether that's materially, emotionally, mentally. It's more work and it's more effort. However, I still prefer that to the alternative, which is remaining a slave to the state and this dependent paradigm where we expect the government to do everything for us. And I'm just so excited at the way independent media is thriving despite these shortcomings. And I know that with our free minds and the internet, decentralization, and the growth of independent media, we can continue to push this paradigm forward in a free market kind of way. That's it. And I just wanted to thank you all so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here. I love it. This is my third time here, and I love it every time. This is the first time I've actually spoken about the crux of what I do. I spoke about yoga in 2016, and then I taught yoga last year. But this year, it's something that this is what I do with my life every day. And so it was a little more nerve-wracking to talk about it, but also a lot more rewarding. That being said, I am teaching a yoga class Saturday morning at 7 a.m. if you guys want to join. I'm going to be touching on themes of freedom over force, and it's going to be a light workout, but it'll be there will be lots of options. So if you're new to yoga, come. If you are experienced with yoga, come, or don't come. It's voluntary, it's up to you. But if you do come, bring water and bring a mat if you have it, and if not, bring a towel if you don't want to have your palms and feet directly on the ground. So that's it. I just wanted to share that. I hope you guys continue to enjoy the conference. I'm having a great time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Carrie Wedler. Thank you. Thank you very much.
There was an idea
to bring together a group of remarkable people
to see if we could become something more.
So when they needed us, we could fight the battles
that they never could. time, the state will know what it's like to lose. To feel so desperately that it's right, yet to fail all the same. Dread it. Run from it. Freedom still arrives.
Vacate the state. Engage all the speakers and get this man a microphone.
Fun isn't something that one considers when eradicating tyranny. But this does put a smile on my face.